President Donald Trump's trip through the Middle East continues. Following his speech in Riyadh yesterday, he met with Ahmad al-Sharaa, the interim president of Syria. According to reports, President Trump urged the Syrian leaders to join the Abraham Accords as a step toward normalizing relations with Israel. And he called on him to reject support for terrorism from neighboring regimes. Meanwhile, our friends in Israel are closely monitoring these developments, especially as missile attacks from Yemen continued to escalate. Joining me now with the latest on these unfolding events is Chris Mitchell. He joins us from Jerusalem. He is the Middle East Bureau Chief for CBN News. Chris, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Great to be with you again, Tony. And speaking of those missile attacks, I would say there was one this morning at 7:30, one last night about 6:30. There were sirens here in Jerusalem, so it's a very real thing for us here in the city.
Now, I want to point that out, that, when we've seen these attacks from Gaza, and I was talking to a member of the Knesset, there were a couple of rockets that were fired from Gaza, but these are missiles, much different, coming from Yemen. And usually Jerusalem has not been affected by many of these attacks, but that's changed with these attacks coming from the Houthis.
Yeah, last night, like I said, there was a ballistic missile and another one early this morning. Thankfully, they were both intercepted. But what that does is you have a couple of million people that are running the bomb shelters. All of us in the office today, we're talking about where you were when the siren went off. Our production manager has to take his 3 little children into the staircase. So it's a very real threat here. Thankfully, most of them are intercepted, but some have come through, like a couple of weeks ago at Ben Gurion Airport.
You're right. That was like a day or so after I was there at the airport that struck, and that's actually affected travel. Many airlines have, in fact, United, which I was flying on, has suspended their flights into Israel. So this has an impact upon Israel.
Very much so. And almost every day, Tony, the airlines come out with a new time where they're going to delay their flights. And it just keeps going on and on. Delta, I think, is back into June right now. But so it does have a big impact on tourism here for sure.
So let me just start with that point. I want to get to the Syrian leader and the meeting that President Trump had with him. But prior to him going to the Middle East, the president or the Trump administration negotiating with the Houthis to end the attacks on U.S. shipping. But Israel was left out of that agreement. And we're seeing what appears to me to be an escalation of these attacks from Yemen.
Yeah, they've decided Yemen certainly did not agree that it would stop attacks on Israel, and it wasn't part of the agreement with the United States. There have been an increase in the last several weeks. I think about 31 in the last couple of weeks. Actually, since the beginning of when the ceasefire ended, the Houthis decided to continue their ballistic attacks against Israel. So they haven't stopped, and it wasn't part of the agreement with the United States.
So how does Israel view that? I mean, are they a little concerned that America kind of looked after its own interest without looking out for the interest of our closest ally in the region?
It is disconcerting to people here in Israel, and it's not the first time. It's not the only issue, I think, in the last few weeks. The Houthi agreement that did not include Israel, the Iranian nuclear deal that Israel's not a part of, this negotiations, this idea of Saudi Arabia normalization, seemingly something that Israel's not a part of. But yeah, it's been disconcerting, I think, and very troubling for people here in Israel in these particular cases.
Well, let's talk about the last 36, 48 hours as the president's been in the region, meeting in Saudi Arabia, as I mentioned earlier, meeting with the new interim Syrian leader, a meeting in which even the Turkish president, Erdogan, was a part of. And I think the president acknowledged that he took this meeting with the Syrian leader, a former member of ISIS, al-Qaeda, at the urging of Erdogan. That is, when you look at that region, Erdogan and Turkey, they have a clear objective to reestablish the Ottoman Empire, the Caliphate. That is seen as a threat to Israel, is it not?
Well, it is. I mean, Erdogan has a long-standing dream of reestablishing the caliphate that had been destroyed after World War I. It had lasted for 400 years. So that has been his dream. He said that in his rhetoric. He actually spoke to the Turkish parliament today, thanking President Trump for his agreement to meet with Shara. And he was part of the conversation yesterday with Mohammed bin Salman, President Trump, and the new leader of Syria right now, Shara. What troubles people here, Tony, I think, is his background. He was a member of Al Qaeda. He has been part of what's called HTS. That was the group that took over from the Assad regime, and he has since disbanded it. Many people wonder his new makeover. He's no longer, dressed in fatigues, but he's dressed in a suit, and he's appealing to Western countries. He was visited French President Macron just a few days ago, and the concern is that he will establish another Islamic regime. I just talked to a man named Dr. Kamal Sido. He's a human rights activist. He's Kurdish. He was born in Syria, but he lives now in Germany. He just spent a lot of time in Syria right now talking to a lot of minorities, including Druze and Kurds, Christians. And what they were telling him is they're concerned this might be an Islamic regime, a concern that these minorities would be at risk, particularly Christians would be at risk, and that there would be an attempt to either persecute or pressure people to convert to Islam. And so that is the balance that right now people are wondering, will Shara become more Western in not only in his dress, but in his behavior? And the other thing is that what Dr. Sido was telling me that really Turkey has a great influence there in the government, and that many of the members of the government, right, are Turkish. He was warned when he was in Damascus to be careful what he said on the phone because of the Turkish police and Secret Service. So it's troubling and concerning, and certainly that's what Israel, as soon as the Assad regime fell and they saw what was being taken over, they destroyed much of the Assad military, not wanting it to fall into the hands of this new regime.
So as you interact with those there in Israel, kind of assessing the last 36 hours as President Trump has been in the region, is there a shifting of power or a regaining of standing by some of these nations that the president has been interacting with?
Well, that's the assessment of some, is that Israel is sort of becoming diminished in a sense. Many of these other powers like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, where he is today, UAE, will he be going in probably just a few hours, gaining influence and prestige with the United States, while Israel is trying to finish its war with Hamas in Gaza. Right now, they're on the cusp of perhaps a large offensive and operation that will finally bring an end to the war, defeat Hamas, and hopefully bring back all the hostages. So it does seem like there has been a bit of a shift here in the region because of what's going on. Thankfully, people are saying they were concerned that there would be a sense of establishing a Palestinian state there in Riyadh. That didn't happen. But certainly there's a feeling of a shift going on right now here in the region.
Well, my sources there in Israel have told me that the president assured the prime minister that there would not be the proposal of a Palestinian state on this trip, that was kind of a red line. The president has, in all of his conversations, Saudi Arabia, with Syria, encouraged and used his influence to get these other countries to join the Abraham Accords and normalize relationships with Israel. That has to be somewhat reassuring to those there in Israel.
Yeah, for sure. And Saudi Arabia would change the whole region for sure. The Israeli President Isaac Herzog said nothing better would he have than he could shake the hands of Mohammed bin Salman. If there were the Abraham Accords joined by Syria, that would be a game changer as well. Right now, I would say there's a strategic concern by Israel, and they want to be cautious about what's happened and maybe cautiously optimistic. But that would be a game changer if all these nations, as President Trump is encouraging them to join the Abraham Accords. And I would say as well, there were 5 criteria that the president set forth, or the White House did, of what they want to hear from Syria, and that would including expelling most of their or all of their foreign terrorists, and changing their attitude toward terrorism and coming against terrorism in the region.
Chris Mitchell, let me ask you about Iran, because that also has been a topic President Trump has brought up repeatedly as he's been asked about it. He's made very clear that Iran has to give up their nuclear plan. But the Secretary of Energy, Chris Wright, told CBS News that he anticipates a deal with Iran by the end of the year. Is there that much time, or does something have to happen sooner?
Well, a lot of people think there may not be that much time for a couple of reasons. First of all, they believe Iran, despite the talks, is pursuing enriching uranium up to nearly military grade uranium. That would be enough to make the amount of uranium they have would enough to make several nuclear weapons. That's one thing. The other thing is that right now, currently, Iran is vulnerable to any military attack because of what happened last year with many of their air defenses being destroyed by Israel, not only in Iran, but also in Syria. So there does seem to be a window of opportunity right now. I'm not sure it's going to last till the end of the year. And a lot of people are wary of Iran because they're master negotiators, and they're excellent at dragging out these negotiations while they continue their nuclear program. That's many ways that's what Iran is so good at, and that's why the concern is here, is that the window of opportunity may not last that long.
But that leaves Israel somewhat in a bind with a ticking clock, but yet at the same time, they can't move without at least a green light or a blessing from the United States. I don't want to get crossways openly with the Trump administration.
Yeah, that's why it's such an awkward position for them right now. They're certainly looking at the negotiations now, and there have been 4 meetings, and yet they don't want to go against and preempt those negotiations. While President Trump really does want to reach a deal. But what would the deal mean? Would it mean reducing their amount of enriched uranium, or would it mean what some people say is an elimination, a destruction of the entire nuclear infrastructure? I understand today there was a letter written by senators and congressmen that would be what they want to see. They want to see like a destruction of their whole nuclear program. And but it seems like these negotiations are talking about things that would be less than that. And certainly Israel is wanting, and Prime Minister Netanyahu said they want what's called the Libyan model back in 2003 or 4, where Libya's nuclear program was completely destroyed. And that would be the best thing that Israel would prefer.
A final question for you, Chris Mitchell. We got about 30 seconds left. I know a lot of folks there in Jerusalem, many Christians are there in Jerusalem and in Israel, just praying, spiritually discerning what is going on. How should Christians back here in the United States and elsewhere be praying right now, given what is unfolding in the Middle East?
Tony, I would say pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Pray that God would continue to protect his people here in this country. Pray that there would be peace in the region like President Trump is advocating for. Pray for great wisdom for Prime Minister Netanyahu of the Israeli government, and especially for President Trump as he navigates the Middle East. Give him wisdom for what he needs to do or not do. Pray also for our good friend Mike Huckabee, new ambassador here to Israel, for wisdom for him. And I think that God's purposes would be fulfilled here in the region and not the plans of man.
Absolutely. That's what we want to pray for God's plans and purposes to be accomplished through his people. Chris Mitchell, always great to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Great to be with you, Tony.